I want to go into each one of these have distinct characteristics which the Jews has to go through, and whatever be under their jurisdiction and dominion and so on, and suffer and so on. I'm going to go into Esav and the Erev Rav, a little more, and Ishmael. Actually, those are the three. Okay. Who is Esav? Who is Rome? Rome? There's no Rome anymore. Rome disappeared either the original 2,000 years ago, or rather 1,500 years ago, or the Byzantines, also a long time ago, and so on. The Torah says there's Esav. Who is Esav? The Torah says Esav zu Edom. Esav is Edomites. The Edomites were a kingdom, whatever, and they are the nation that arose from Esav. Esav, we know, is the brother of Yaakov, right? Yaakov and Esav. And then the Edomites were the nation that came out of Esav. So that is Edom. Who is Edom? So the Gemara says that Edom is Roimi. Edom is Rome. Without going into how is that possible, I'm not getting into that. But Rome is Edom, which means that Rome is Esav. You see. Now, what was interesting is that since Esav, Edom, Rome, is the fifth nation that will persecute the Jews or make them suffer. So the question is, wait a minute, if the Jews are going to be involved in the Tikkun until the end of time, that means Rome will dominate as an empire until now. That means we still will have Rome, right? Because they're the fifth and they dominate us, correct? So therefore, as long as we need, Golus by Rome, right, then Rome is going to be around today because they have to dominate us. So what God did is very interesting. He took Rome and he changed it into a religion. So therefore, the religion follows us, but not Rome. So he took away the concept of Esav, that it's no longer a political entity, it is rather a religion. And that religion will dominate us and persecute us. Who did Rome become? Christianity, obviously. If you've ever been in the Vatican is filled with Roman statues. Why? Because the Vatican is Christian, right? And it's religious and so on and so forth. Why would they have Roman statues? And the answer is because, according to Hashkafa, the spiritual heir of Rome is Christianity. So therefore, Christianity, which is the Vatican, has all those Roman statues in it because they took it over. They took over the job of Esav, Edom, to persecute the Jews and so on. Which is also, there's another very interesting idea, two ideas. One is that Rome, Christianity, became Western civilization. So Western civilization is the last great exile of the Jews. That's really so far what's happening, and so on. Now, Western civilization, of course, has dominated the Jews for an enormous amount of time. And if you look at this, where is the seat of Christianity? And the answer is the Vatican, right? In Italy, which of course is Rome. If you take the word Vatican and write it in Hebrew, Vatikan, and you jumble the letters, it will spell Tikkun. Yes, the word Vatican jumbled in Hebrew spells Tikkun. Because the essential of Tikkun of Klal Yisrael for the last 2,000 years has been Christianity. And Jews have suffered terribly under Christianity. There are ways of seeing this, but the amount of slaughter that the Jews have experienced at the hands of the Christians is beyond belief. Historians estimate that 2,000 years ago, there were 10 million Jews, approximately from 8 to 10 million Jews. 2,000 years ago, in time of Rome. Historians also estimate that 2,000 years ago, there were 25 million Chinese. Interesting. How many Chinese people are there today, 2,000 years later? 1.3 billion. How many Jews are there today? Well, 2,000 years ago, we numbered about 10 million, 14 million. Can you tell me how in the world, after 2,000 years, there's only 4 million Jews more? Where are they? And the answer is destroyed. Basically, we really should have been over 500 million Jews. Because according to normal population dynamics, right? If there are 25 million to 1.3 billion in 2,000 years, so if we're 10 million, we should be at least 400 or 500 million Jews. Can you imagine, where are these 400 or 500 million Jews? They're gone, destroyed, slaughtered. By who? The major element of slaughter, of course, was the Christians. Terrible what they've done to the Jews. In any case, therefore, you can begin to feel and see what the Golos has done to the Jewish people. Terrible slaughter. Could you imagine 500 million Jews? You can imagine how many shuls there would be? You know, it's incredible. And that, you begin to understand the slaughter of the Jews. We don't realize that. But if you ask yourself, how could there be only 14 million Jews if we were 10 million Jews 2,000 years ago? But not only that, think about it. We started 2,000 years before the Romans, Avram Avinu, right? So that's 4,000 years ago. How could there be 14 million Jews from a nation that existed 4,000 years? We should be 2 billion Jews, right? Can you imagine how many arguments there would be, right? And why isn't there? Because the slaughter of the nations. That's what anti-Semitism in many ways has caused us and so on. And anyway, so therefore, this is Esav, okay. Esav, Edom, Rome, Christianity, Western civilization. Now, wait a minute. But Western civilization is divided into several segments or sections. Why? Because Esav had three characteristics. The first characteristic Esav had is what? He was tremendous gaiva, tremendous arrogant person. Vayives Esav es haBechorah, and Esav despised the birthright. That's arrogance. He was also a tremendous fraud, mirma. He deceived Isaac, Yitzchak, all the time, right? He was an imposter, you see. He couldn't say what he was. He used to hide the fact that he used to go out and kill people, whatever he did, right? And then he'd come back and say, do I have to give tithe and salt? What a fraud. The third aspect of Esav is taiva, pleasure. Esav was incredibly into taiva, without getting into which taiva he loved. But he was a tremendous Baal taiva. That is why Western civilization is divided into three sections. Right? Gaiva, taiva, and mirma, fraud, deception. The gaiva is Russia, communism. The aspect of gaiva of Esav is so dangerous, it can only survive 70 years, which is what communism did. Russia is really Christian because it's the Russian Orthodox Church. But for 70 years, it was atheism, arrogance that took over. That's the gaiva of Esav. The mirma, the fraud. Who's the fraud of Esav? Europe. Europe is a fraud. You know, they have Christians. More Jews were killed in the name of their guy than all wars combined. And this is Europe, because most of the Jewish history is really in Europe, you know. In any case, Europe is the fraud. And they've always been a fraud. That's what the European civilization is all about. They don't have the guts to come out and say the truth or whatever. Anyway, and the taiva of Esav, we know what the taiva is, America. Western civilization, America's taiva, you know. It's like you sit down with a guy and say, let's talk philosophy. So the guy says, philosophy? Okay, let's go to a restaurant, talk over a meal, good hot meal, right? Whatever, you know, great steak. Anyway. America is the taiva. Where do you see that? And that's when you begin to realize that's the clue is towards in terms of what's happening. And that is that. So we have the gaiva and the mirma, the fraud of Esav, and America is the taiva. America is really the toiv sheba Esav, the mildest part of Esav. You see, America is a very good country, and it's the mildest part of Esav. You know where you see this? Remember Esav? What was the biggest mitzvah he ever did? Keep it over aim. He was enormously respectful. You tell me which country has Father's Day and Mother's Day. Interesting, isn't it? It's America. You see, why? Because that's the Toiv Sheba Esav. It's the mildest part of Esav and so on. I realize it sounds a little, but they are the Toiv Sheba Esav, yes, which has enormous consequences later on. So that's really what America is. That's Esav is divided. Western civilization is divided into three parts. Okay, the second, of course, is Ishmael, the Arabs. The Arabs are really the Muslims. Only 10% of the Muslim world is Arab. The rest are all like Indonesia is the largest Muslim population in the world. Turkey and Iran, they're not Arabs, they're Muslims. But it's the Muslims that represent Ishmael. And they clearly have dominated the Jews for hundreds of years, 1,500 years since Muhammad, and so on. So that's Ishmael. The last one is the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav is what's called a mixed multitude, but it's very important to understand who they are and what they are, because in the end, they are the greatest enemy of Israel. the Jews themselves. The Jews destroy the Jews, even though they don't want to destroy Jews, but in the end, that's what happens. How does it all start? It all starts by Yaakov. When Yaakov was going to meet Esau, he was very much afraid. So he prays to God in Vayishlach. He prays to God, and he says, "Hatzileni no miad ochi miad Esau." Save me from my brother Esau. Now we know Esau is his brother, so why should it say, "Save me from my brother Esau"? And the idea to that is Yaakov was saying, look, save me from this guy, whether he comes to me as my brother, which means, hey, brotherhood, right? Or when he comes to me as an enemy called Esau. You see, why? Because the problem is, when you have a brother, you see, you don't recognize him as an enemy. This is the problem. So Yaakov said, when Esau comes to me as a brother, right, save me, because I don't even recognize him as an enemy. And save me, right, when he comes as Esau, which is clearly an enemy. That's the concept of Hatzileni. And it was the Erev Rav that did the Chet Egel, basically, right? The Erev Rav has been terrible. It's Jews trying to destroy, in many ways, the Judaism of other Jews. Why are they so powerful, the Erev Rav? I'll tell you why. Because the Erev Rav is a tumor. Why is cancer so powerful? Because cancer is self. The body does not recognize self. Because a cancer cell is really self. It's you. Except the breakdown has been in how many times it can multiply. So the body doesn't attack a cancer cell because it says, hey, the cancer cell is really self, right? It's because the body doesn't recognize it as an enemy. That's why cancer is really a brother. It's an och. The body does not recognize it as what? As an enemy. That's why cancer is so powerful. Same thing with the Erev Rav. It's Jewish. Hey, he loves me. He's a Jew. Even though he's trying to destroy my religion, we don't recognize that as an incredible enemy of what he wants to do. In other words, the essential idea of an Erev Rav is a Jew who doesn't want to destroy Jews at all. He could say, I love Jews, but he wants to destroy the bond that exists between the Jews and God. The whole bond, the whole agreement is the Torah itself. And he wants to replace the Torah with something else. Whether it be replace the Torah with the state of Israel. What do you have to be Jewish for? I mean, what do you need this for? We're Israelis. That's one way of doing it. It's always trying to replace the uniqueness of a Jew with something else, you see, or culture. Hey, of course the Bible is great. It's great literature. But then so is Shakespeare, you see. Or, look, we have gefilte fish, right? That's what makes us Jewish, right? Or matzah brei, knedlach, whatever you're into, right? And so, in other words, what he tries to do is destroy the unique bond that the Jew has with God. And that's really everything. There is nothing but that bond. That's an Erev Rav, you see. Very dangerous, because they profess love of Jews. That's not the problem. But they destroy the ruchnius, the whole olam haba, future world of a Jew. And as far as God is concerned, that is the greatest destruction you could do to his people. There is nothing greater. Because if you kill a Jew physically, he's dead here, but at least he gets olam haba. You destroy his religion, he doesn't get olam haba, so you have destroyed him for eternity. What a difference, you see. Now I want to say something, that the Jewish people are not Erev Rav. They're just Amaratzim. Jewish people are assimilated, they're intermarried and so on. A Jewish person is not an Erev Rav. He's just Rachmanis. He's a lost Jew. An Erev Rav is a leader of the Jews, you see. And if you have to identify some of them, in America it's the Reformed movement and the conservative movement and the Reconstructionists that have destroyed Judaism in America. And how the state of Israel can even entertain these people when they realize that the Reform movement has destroyed the bond that exists between the Jew and his God, how they can even entertain legitimatizing any aspect of them. And in Eretz Yisrael, unfortunately, it's the Zionists. Because it's one thing, you can have religious Zionism, where Eretz Yisrael is part of whatever, if you believe that it's part of the prophecy that, of course, we get Israel back, of course, right? But to say that Israel replaces Judaism or the Torah is terrible, destroys the Jews. So in many ways, the Zionists, they're the Erev Rav, the leaders, and so on. Now that you understand the definition. In the end of time, all three of these dominate. Christianity, Western civilization, Ishmael, the Arabs, and the Erev Rav. That's what dominates. Those are the last three subjugations of the Jewish people uh, in the end of time. And right now, to understand the termination phase, that's really what we have to focus on. You see. Great. Okay.